The golden age of country music wasn't always about rhinestones and standing ovations. Behind those big hits and legendary voices were secrets, scandals, and stories Nashville didn't want anyone to know. Some stars broke all the rules. Others got caught up in crime, heartbreak, and shocking twists no one saw coming. These weren't just minor bumps in the road. These moments rocked the entire music world and left marks that can still be felt today. From wild arrests to explosive feuds, these are the 10 Golden Age country scandals that changed country music forever. Starting with Johnny Horton's death. Johnny Horton wasn't just another country singer. He was a storyteller with a voice that could transport you to another time. Born on April 30th, 1925 in Los Angeles, California, Horton grew up in Texas and Louisiana, where he developed a love for music. His big break came in the late 1950s when he started recording historical ballads. Songs like The Battle of New Orleans and North to Alaska turned him into a country music sensation. Fans loved his unique blend of honky-tonk and rockabilly, and his music still holds a special place in country history. But while his career was soaring, Horton had a darker side. He was deeply superstitious. He believed in premonitions and even told his close friends that he had a bad feeling about his fate. He was convinced that he would die at the hands of a drunk driver. This wasn't just something he casually mentioned. He was serious about it. So much so that he avoided playing in venues that served alcohol. He even told his wife, Billie Jean Horton, that if anything happened to him, she would receive a sign from him after his death. On the night of November 5th, 1960, his eerie prediction came true. While driving home from a show in Austin, Texas, Horton's car was hit by a drunk driver near the Little River Bridge on Highway 79. He was badly injured but still alive when help arrived. Tragically, he didn't make it to the hospital. His bassist and manager, who were also in the car, survived with serious injuries. After his death, strange things happened that made his loved ones believe he kept his promise to send a sign. His song, One Woman Man, mysteriously played on a dead radio while his friend Tillman Franks was driving. Franks brushed it off, but years later, the song became a hit again when George Jones re-recorded it in 1988, just as if Horton had predicted it. Even though his life was cut short, Johnny Horton's music and legacy never faded. His wife, Billie Jean, later became known for her connection to two other country legends. She was previously married to Hank Williams. Today, Horton's music continues to be celebrated, and his chilling premonition remains one of the strangest stories in country music history. Hank Williams' tragic fall. Hank Williams is a name every country music fan knows. Even if you don't follow country music, you've probably heard his songs somewhere. Hits like You're Cheatin' Hard and I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry made him a star. But while his music felt honest and raw, his personal life was filled with pain and problems. Hank was born in Alabama in 1923. From a young age, he loved music and taught himself to play guitar. By his early 20s, he was already a rising star. His voice, his lyrics, everything about him felt real. That's what made fans love him. But behind the scenes, Hank was hiding a lot. He had a painful condition called spina bifida occulta. It's a problem with the spine that made everyday life hard for him. The pain never really went away. To cope, Hank started drinking. Later, doctors gave him pain pills, and things only got worse from there. By the early 1950s, Hank's drinking and drug use were out of control. He was fired from the Grand Ole Opry, the biggest stage in country music. His marriage to Audrey Williams also fell apart, and even though he was still making music, his health was quickly getting worse. On New Year's Eve in 1952, Hank was traveling to a concert in Ohio. A college student was driving him, but during the trip, Hank's condition got worse. He got a shot from a doctor to ease his pain, but it was too much for his weak heart. Hours later, in the back seat of that car, Hank Williams died at just 29 years old. After his death, fans filled the streets at his funeral in Montgomery. And even today, Hank Williams is remembered as one of the greatest country artists ever, a legend who left too soon. Johnny Cash's arrests that made him a rebel icon. Johnny Cash wasn't just a country star, he became a symbol of rebellion. His deep voice and dark clothes made him stand out. But what really made his image unforgettable were his run-ins with the law. Cash got arrested 7 times. He wasn't a dangerous criminal, but his wild behavior often got him in trouble. One time he was caught smuggling pills across the Mexican border. The police found hundreds of amphetamines in his guitar case. That arrest cost him a fine and a night in jail, but it gave his fans a whole new way to see him. Another time, Cash was arrested for picking flowers in the middle of the night. It sounds harmless, but the flowers were on private land, and that made it trespassing. There was also the night in Starkville, Mississippi, where Cash got drunk, made noise, and kicked his jail cell door until he broke his toe. Even though Cash never served a real prison sentence, those small arrests built his outlaw image. It wasn't fake, he really was living wild. And that made people believe his songs even more. But Cash wasn't all trouble. In fact, some of his most famous performances happened inside prisons. He sang at places like San Quentin and Folsom Prison, bringing music to inmates who understood his pain. In 1979, in a twist no one expected, Johnny Cash even became a sheriff's deputy in Davidson County, Tennessee, a former troublemaker, now part of the law. Through all the ups and downs, Cash stayed a legend. He fought addiction for years, but in the end, his music and his story mattered most. Even today, when people think about outlaw country, Johnny Cash is the first name that comes to mind. Tammy Wynette and George Jones, The Marriage Full of Heartbreak. Tammy Wynette and George Jones were country music royalty. Fans loved their music, and together they made some of the best country duets ever. But behind closed doors, their marriage was a whole different story. Tammy and George married in 1969, and from the start, their life together was a roller coaster. George Jones had a serious drinking problem, and when he drank, everything went wrong. He would miss shows, disappear for days, and sometimes even get violent. Tammy Wynette didn't have it easy either. She had her own health problems, and she ended up depending on painkillers. That only made their problems worse. One of the craziest stories from their marriage happened when Tammy took away George's car keys to stop him from buying alcohol. But that didn't stop him. George found a riding lawnmower and drove it all the way to the liquor store. That wild moment became part of his legend. Tammy and George split up in 1975 after years of fights and heartbreak. But even after the divorce, they kept singing together. They knew their fans still loved seeing them on stage as a pair. After their divorce, Tammy married George Ritchie, a songwriter and producer, and stayed with him until her death in 1998. George Jones finally found stability too when he married Nancy Sepulvado in 1983. She helped him turn his life around. In 1995, Tammy and George reunited for an album called One. Fans were thrilled, but it was the last time they worked together. Tammy passed away just a few years later, and George died in 2013. Even though their marriage was full of pain, their music still means everything to country fans today. Patsy Cline's fight against Nashville's old rules. Patsy Cline wasn't just a country singer, she was a fighter. Born in 1932 in Virginia, Patsy had a voice so powerful that no one could ignore her. But her talent wasn't the only thing that made her stand out. Patsy was bold. She said what she thought, even if people didn't like it. And in 1950s Nashville, that was a big problem. Back then, female singers were expected to act proper. They were told how to dress, how to speak, and even what songs to sing. But Patsy didn't follow those rules. She wore pants when women were told to only wear dresses. She demanded the same pay as men, which was unheard of for female singers at that time. And when producers tried to push her around, Patsy pushed right back. Some powerful men in Nashville didn't like that. They called her difficult. They said she was too bossy. But Patsy didn't care. She was there to sing her way and make sure female artists got the respect they deserved. Even though she faced all that drama, Patsy still became a star. Songs like Crazy and Walkin' After Midnight made her a legend. But her success didn't stop the fights. Right up until her tragic death in 1963, Patsy kept speaking out. And in doing so, she helped open the door for future women in country music. Today, Patsy's music still plays everywhere, from country bars to movies and even in karaoke rooms. And thanks to her bravery, female country stars now have more control over their careers. Spade Cooley, from music star to convicted killer. Spade Cooley's story is one of the darkest in country music history. In the 1940s, Spade was a huge name in Western swing music. He had hit songs, starred in movies, and even had his own TV show in Los Angeles. Fans loved his upbeat music and smooth style, but no one knew the truth about what was happening behind closed doors. Spade's marriage to his wife, Ella Mae, was troubled from the start. Both of them accused each other of cheating, and the fights got worse over the years. Spade had a violent temper, and Ella Mae often told friends that she was scared of him. She even told nurses at a hospital that Spade had threatened to kill her. In April 1961, things reached a tragic end. Ella Mae was planning to leave Spade for good, but before she could, Spade snapped. In a fit of rage, he brutally murdered her at their home in California. What made it even worse was that their 14-year-old daughter, Melody, saw it all. She later testified against her own father in court. The trial shocked the country music world. Fans couldn't believe that someone they loved on TV could do something so awful. Spade was convicted and sent to prison, ending his career forever. While in prison, Spade asked to perform at a charity concert in 1969. After his performance, he suffered a heart attack and died backstage. Today, Spade Cooley's name is rarely mentioned in country music history. His crimes left a dark stain on his legacy. But his case also forced the music industry to take a closer look at how they handled stars' personal troubles, something that had long been ignored. Loretta Lynn's songs that radio tried to ban. Loretta Lynn was not just a country singer, she was a voice for real women. Born in 1932 in a poor coal mining town in Kentucky, Loretta knew all about hard work and tough living. She married at just 15 years old, had 4 kids before she turned 20, and spent her early years raising babies and working odd jobs. But even then, Loretta had a dream: to sing her stories to the world. By the 1960s, Loretta was a rising star. She wasn't afraid to sing about real life, even when the topics were uncomfortable. In 1975, she shocked country radio with her song, "The Pill." It wasn't about heartbreak or cheating, it was about birth control. Loretta sang about women finally being able to choose their own future, instead of being stuck in a cycle of pregnancy. Radio stations across the country banned the song, calling it inappropriate. But the ban made people even more curious. Fans rushed to buy the record, and it became one of Loretta's biggest hits. That wasn't the only time Loretta shook things up. Her song Rated X talked about divorced women being judged, and Don't Come Home a-Drinkin' warned husbands not to expect romance after a night of drinking. These songs made some radio stations nervous, but they made Loretta's fans love her even more. Loretta kept singing her truth for decades. She won countless awards, published a best-selling book, and even had a hit movie made about her life, Coal Miner's Daughter. Loretta passed away in 2022 at the age of 90, but her fearless music and honest voice still inspire female artists today. Waylon Jennings' drug bust that became a song. Waylon Jennings was a rebel from the start. Born in Texas in 1937, he quit school at 16 to play guitar on the radio. By the 1970s, Waylon was one of the biggest stars in country music, but he was also living a fast and wild life. He loved music, and he also loved drugs. In 1977, Waylon was recording in a Nashville studio when the police burst in. They had a warrant claiming Waylon had cocaine in the studio. But here's the twist. The warrant was wrong. It said Waylon owned the studio, but he was only renting it. While the cops were outside arguing about paperwork, Waylon and his drummer got rid of the drugs. Even though the charges were later dropped, the story spread like wildfire. Waylon didn't hide from it. Instead, he wrote a song about the whole thing called "Don't you think this outlaw bit's done got out of hand?" The song told the truth about the raid and fans loved it. Waylon's outlaw image only grew after that. He became a symbol of country artists fighting against the system, making music their own way, not how Nashville wanted. But the drugs took their toll. Waylon later admitted he had a $1 500 a day cocaine habit, which nearly destroyed him. In 1984, Waylon finally quit drugs cold turkey. He stayed clean for the rest of his life, but his health never fully recovered. Waylon passed away in 2002 at the age of 64, after years of heart and diabetes problems. Even with his troubles, Waylon changed country music forever. He proved artists didn't have to follow Nashville's rules to succeed, and that outlaw spirit still lives on in country music today. The lawsuit that almost broke Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton's story would not be complete without Porter Wagoner. In 1967, Porter gave Dolly her first big break when he invited her to join the Porter Wagoner Show. For years, they sang duets, made hit records, and became country music's favorite pair. But behind the smiles, trouble was brewing. Dolly knew she had more to offer as a solo artist. She wanted to write her own songs, control her music, and build her own name. In 1974, after 7 years with Porter, she told him she was leaving the show. Porter was not happy. He felt he had made Dolly a star and believed he deserved a cut of everything she earned for life. Things got even worse in 1979 when Porter sued Dolly for $3 million. That's a lot of money now, and back then, it was even more. He claimed Dolly had broken their contract and owed him a chunk of her success. Dolly could have fought back in court, but she didn't want to drag her family or her private life into a nasty legal fight. So she agreed to settle out of court for around $1 million. At the time, Dolly didn't have $1 million. She was a star, but most of her money was tied up in her career. To pay Porter, she had to sell rights to some of her songs, borrow money, and work harder than ever. Even though the lawsuit hurt her deeply, Dolly never stayed bitter. In fact, years later, she helped induct Porter into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Dolly showed the world that success isn't just about talent. It's also about standing up for yourself and knowing when to forgive. The payola scandal. The dirty secret behind country music radio. In the 1950s and 60s, getting a song played on the radio could make or break a country artist. But back then, airplay wasn't always about talent. It was often about money under the table. This secret system, known as payola, shook the entire music world. Payola meant record labels or managers would pay DJs to play certain songs more often. The more the song played, the bigger the hit. It wasn't illegal at first, but it was unfair. It meant money mattered more than music, and unknown artists didn't stand a chance. In country music, payola was a huge deal. Some of the biggest country acts of the time got caught up in the scandal. If a new artist couldn't afford to pay for plays, their songs were often ignored, no matter how good they were. Established artists and labels used payola to protect their spot at the top, shutting out fresh talent. Things got so bad that in 1960, the U.S. government held hearings to expose the truth. Famous DJs admitted they took thousands of dollars in secret payments. One DJ confessed he made $22,000 just for playing one song. It was clear the music industry needed new rules. After the hearings, laws changed. Payola became illegal. Radio stations were forced to be more honest about how they chose songs. But the damage was done. Many artists felt cheated, and fans wondered if they had ever really chosen their favorite songs, or if the system had chosen for them. Today, payola is still talked about, especially when people question how some songs suddenly blow up. But because of the payola scandal, the music business learned a hard lesson. Music should be heard because it's good, not because someone paid for it. Which of these scandals surprised you the most? And why? And do you think country music would be the same today without these shocking stories? Or did these scandals actually help shape the future of the industry? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more such stories.